Last year, I received a letter at the township building addressed to all supervisors present, plus a solicitor, giving me a tick-tock letter to resign or else. This year, I had a resident file a complaint against my own property, and at the end of the complaint, mentioned stuff about the police department, which was really, I feel in my opinion, triggered off my vote on the 8th officer last year, where I had to open my doors, let the zoning officer go in my place to clear me with the presence of some other supervisors. The last two parts there, you always think about when things are done, who benefits? That's what the Romans said, right? Who benefits? For any action. That's what makes me scared too, a lot, what goes on, because those last two are pretty tricky moves to do, especially the tick-tock letter of resignation. And they used a deceased resident who passed away just 6 months prior. They used his name to try to intimidate me to resign, which I thought was horrible, because, his wife was very insulted of that letter to even be using his name. She's still grieving, yet someone out there is using his name to intimidate me, even though I was friendly with him and I had no issues with him, obviously off of the threat. But it's things like that. We're a simple little town, and I think I think one of the things I asked the board to do was to post the contract, the changes up on the Facebook page and the township page. The two supervisors that sided with me to do that was Steve and Carol. And I'm very thankful for that, because it has to be felt that this is just a discussion about numbers and what the residents want. They might want more police services, and if that's the general masses, then so
I
be
don't
it.
think Wilson and I chimed in, because once you had three, you didn't need us.
I was just pointing out.
It was just like the negotiation for this contract. There was three, Wilson, Steve and I, two other people didn't chime in. But we didn't say that, hey, you voted against it.
I
It
didn't
was,
say,
once you hit three, you don't need 4 and 5.
right. Well,
So
the
I didn't bother responding.
the
but yeah.
contracts, actually, the vote for the contract's tonight. So that's the vote for the contract, so it's up.
I mean, our temporary agreement was as soon as we hit 3, nobody else had to vote.
Well, that's not an
It is
official,
what I
that's
said.
not an official
That's
vote.
tentative.
That's
Yeah.
tentative.
Yeah.
This is the official.
I mean, like what you asked in the email was, as soon as you hit the third person, I didn't bother responding.
I asked I'm not pointing out, in fact, I'm just saying the supervisors, what I'm trying to say is the movement. There was 3 supervisors where in years past, things like that possibly weren't done. Where this is really important, because other municipalities are affected, and that's how arbitration will use data. It will use other municipalities in arbitration to make decisions against a municipality.
Well, it's the first thing Eric said was the rest of the municipalities are gonna hate us. Or the police forces in all the other municipalities are gonna be really hot, because we got 10% towards our hospitalization. Because they will use that, every township will use that from now on.
Right, so the data, by having the data up on the Facebook page serves so many different purposes. At least it gets the information out there. Hopefully in the future, as far as I don't think, one of the things that was on my campaign flyer was intimidation. Unfortunately, I would receive some of it myself, but I can deal with it, it's no problem. But the thing is, it's about the numbers. I know people get paid salaries and things like that, but we should, as a municipality as a whole, be able to discuss what we're discussing tonight. And I think that's really important without, the things that go on that I've seen in years past.
Well, you made a comment too, that the lawyer wasn't brought into that negotiation until I asked for it. But you didn't say that. Randy was the one that said, hey, I'm the new guy here, how come we didn't bring the lawyer in with the police negotiations?
Well, we were trying to negotiate directly with them,
Right.
which was a different
But yeah,
approach
and
to be able
then you want
to.
to throw out there Wilson and I didn't say, hey, put the numbers up, like, we wanted to keep it all secret from everyone.
I didn't say that last part.
Well, what does it sound like?
I didn't point anything, no, I just said the last two, that the supervisors that said that they were for it. I'm just pointing out who said they were for it. I'm not saying that you guys were against it.
Well, maybe I should have said something, because you did say it was for transparency, and it is.
Right.
Maybe I should have said something at the time, but I wasn't against it.
And I'm not saying you guys are against transparency. What I'm just saying is that here it is for a long time that I've felt as a resident sitting out there, one thing I've always fought for is like an open government. You've heard supervisors use that in the past, and it might even been from me helping them to get that out there. I think there's a lot more transparency going on here by getting that out there. Obviously, it was out there enough for anyone that was interested to show up, and thankfully you folks did. I remember sitting out in that meeting myself for periods of time. I was the only resident out there for 6 months. No one came. There's 8,000 residents, and by, whether they're here or not, they are gonna feel the effect of this vote, and hopefully in the years going forward, put their input in so we know how to govern as a township going forward and what we need to really maintain order and also affordability. That's really what it's about. So I'm happy that this is going on, not to be long-winded, so.
Sir?
I got a question. I think I heard right, that once you get three in favor or against a subject, you don't bother with the other two?
No, I was gonna say, I didn't bother telling him, hey, put it up on the website because he already had 3 people to do
No,
it.
but it ought to be a matter of record where each member of the board.
It wasn't a
can
public
put
meeting.
in-
It wasn't
That's
a
what we're
vote.
doing tonight.
It wasn't a vote, he was just looking, should we put it on the website?
I was asking for board support to put it up on the
It wasn't
website so
an
the
official
residents can
motion.
see it. Yeah, you would be, most folks would be showing up tonight. You don't know who's interested in
Right.
it.
I was told by someone about a vote regarding taxes, property taxes. But then, there were a couple members who didn't want their names mentioned because they weren't in favor of it.
What?
No, that's,
Okay, I just said.
No, all board supervisor members were here for the tax vote.
right.
Yeah, and it's just a continuation of what happened is the vote last year, was only good for a year. So it wasn't put into, carrying forward, so it was just a vote that happened again this year.
And this year's was only 1 year ago.
Yeah,
No, I think we made it, in less than until it's changed.
yeah.
Yeah, so we don't have to vote on that every.
May I ask one other question?
Sure.
Regarding the sewer services.
Well, this
No, you
is
gotta
regarding,
stay-
this is
you gotta
regarding
stay
the
where
police.
we're at.
We have to
No,
stay on
say
top.
that was a big topic of concern of the board quite some number of years ago.
Yeah,
And,
then we
We
can,
can't go there right now.
yeah, this is
We gotta
only
get rid of
regarding
this.
the police.
Number A.
You can bring it up later during public participation, absolutely.
Yeah.
Mr. Croker?
Well, put a little positive on this. I want to thank you all for doing this negotiation. I know it's tough, and it's always trying to find that happy medium. And I want to thank the police chief for working on picking away a few things here and there and bringing that down where he can. And I just was using a quick figure of, say it's $1.5 million a year for the police. By 7,500 residents, that's $200 apiece. So I'm willing to throw my $200 in any day for the protection that we're getting right now. Because the stuff you don't hear about, that's the way I want to hear about the police department. I don't want to hear anything bad. So thank you for your good work.
Well taken.
Thank you.
I never added it up per person like that now, so it sounds a whole lot cheaper than that rate. You can't get much for $200.
Not these days, hardly a meal even sometimes.
I can't even get the wife and I in Disney
All right,
World, both.
Scott, you can have
For 200
a comment.
I just wanted to address what Ed had mentioned about, what is a TikTok letter? And was that an official? I don't know what a TikTok letter
It was
is.
just it was a letter sent to the board last year around June, giving me fair warning and sent a solicitor to resign because a former resident out there had secret tapes of and it's a resident that we all know that sat in the meeting. That it was like, otherwise they were gonna turn it over to the Attorney General. So if I resigned in 30 days, they would send it to my house and then everything would be clear. And the craziness of it is, it's a man that's deceased. His wife is like, even saying he liked you a lot, there was nothing like that. But the fact to use that, but it's the thought of just the threat. It's like, where are we?
Okay,
Doing something
so
like
that
that.
person
That's
is
what-
now deceased?
Yeah, it's a deceased resident, yeah.
He was deceased before the letter.
Before
Someone
the
else
letter,
wrote the
yeah.
letter.
Before
that
the
was
Deceased
this guy.
That was
before.
20 is that 2015,
Yeah, it was last year, yeah.
2016 or 20?
The year before.
Okay, okay, I just want to make sure.
And that's what it was, but in the end, this
Okay,
doesn't really have any bearing on the contract
well,
vote. All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Motion carries 4-1. Bamboo ordinance, just for discussion, we had discussed this previously, and Mike came up with a sample ordinance, draft ordinance. Really, I guess, it's if the board has any questions on it at this point. as well as, I believe the next step would be to have it go through the planning commission
Yeah,
for their
that's where I
review.
typically send it to the planning commission for them to review and have their eyes on it, thoughts on it. Generally, what it requires is a buffer zone, I think it's 30 feet, on properties in the township that people can't plant or maintain invasive species of bamboo, because as Tag mentioned before back in December, what happens is this stuff, running bamboo, it grows fast, it grows tall, and once it gets a collection of snow on it, it falls and it's gonna, 30 feet tall, it's gonna fall into the road. So that's what the draft ordinance is generally aimed at doing.
Does the board have any more follow-ups on this topic?
No, Mike, we addressed that we're only dealing with the area that Tag stated. We're not
Correct.
preventing it from being, some residents with larger tracts of property.
Internal.
Yeah, would like to use it for side barriers, and they're friendly with their neighbors, and as Robert Frost said, fences make good neighbors, you know, so we're just addressing it where it's
a nuisance.
where it's needed.
And so that'd be 30 feet from any lane, street, or road, or 15 feet from any neighboring property line.
So then we can move this on for the planning commission review?
Yep.
Planning commission bylaws and alternatives, this is a follow-up from a few discussions regarding just updating our books to show more than one line about what the planning commission is for, as well as for them to set up bylaws and to handle the new concept of having alternates on the board as well. So I move that the township authorize the advertisement of the planning commission ordinance in the form as presented by the township solicitor for consideration of approval at the board meeting on February 28, 2017. Do I have a second?
So generally, to explain what this does is in section 1, it takes all those things that Dennis had laid out for the planning commission to do, because as Steve mentioned, in our current code, our current book of ordinances, it has like a one-liner for what the planning commission does. And this expands it out to cover, it is the 14, but it's really 15, because one of them has a subparagraph, different categories of tasks that the planning commission is tasked with doing. And then the second part of it, which would then allow the PC to move forward with its proposed bylaws, is it creates the position of an alternate on the planning commission. And so the board would have the right to choose, select 1 to 3 residents of the township to serve as alternates. And to the extent that there are absences, abstentions, vacancies, recusals, those people then can fill in at the PC meetings to participate. Thank you.
Mike, is there any change of structure with the board of supervisors in this, as far as, is it still something that they would come to the elected board?
Now, if you look at the very first sentence in A, it's the planning commission shall, at the request of the board of supervisors, have the following powers.
Okay. Which one was that, in A, you said?
Yeah, section 1, 202, subsection A. It's the introductory language. And the planning commission still remains an advisory body. Certainly, they're very important advisory bodies. I'm on my own planning commission, township's planning commission. So.
So the board of supervisor would request at a public meeting, is that what would happen there?
Yes, so a great example is the bamboo ordinance we just spoke
Right.
about.
Okay. That's customer.
Any questions or comments from the public? Mr. Crook, since this is definitely pertains to your area.
Yes, excuse me, just on the, I kind of want to separate us in certain aspect. This is for the powers and duties, right? Am I correct, Steve?
Yes, the powers and duties as well as creating the position of the PC
With the
alternates.
alternatives, yeah.
Yep.
The bylaws, we're going to be presenting that at the next meeting. I think
Yeah.
we've gone through that with Mr. Crotty a couple of times. It didn't quite get cleaned out as much as we wanted, but we'll present that at the next meeting instead of this one. So we're just looking at the powers and duties and creating the alternative. We've got one person ready for that. I wanted to ask you while we got that, for when you look looked at some of the bylaws that we were looking at. Should attendance possibly be in with this thing?
I'm sorry, what?
Attendance, the attendance section?
So that's something that
For
would need to be
membership?
incorporated usually into an ordinance. I know you have it in your bylaws, but that would, as I noted in my comment to the bylaws, that would need to be incorporated into an ordinance to, and the idea is mandatory attendance, and if you don't, meet that attendance requirement, you're subject to removal by the Board of Supervisors.
Well, we usually bring it to the Board of
Usually do,
Supervisors one way or the other, right?
Correct.
Yeah, okay. All right, yeah, we'll talk about that later.
Okay.
But is your policy still the same? Is it what, 2 meetings, 3 meetings? What's your policy for attendance?
That's what we're gonna be presenting in the bylaws next time.
Okay, but you do have if I remember right from boards like in '08, they did those bylaws, but like, wasn't there like 2 meetings missed, or, I remember seeing
No,
at one some point.
we were talking about it, other
Okay.
people said that we had bylaws, but we never found them anyplace.
Yeah, I remember Garth put in some.
Yeah,
Yeah.
who wants to go digging up the
Right.
vote? Meg's office.
Right.
But, yeah, we're gonna present that at the next one.
Okay.
We did a lot of discussion on that, so.
And just mechanically, in order to memorialize it so it's not lost to the future in somebody's desk drawer, we'd usually do kind of a one-liner resolution to approve the bylaws. That way it goes in the township's resolution book, and therefore it's all there together forever, shouldn't be lost.
The bylaws,
Yes.
put in the ordinance book?
Not in the ordinance book, the resolution book. Ordinances need to be advertised, resolutions do not.
Oh, okay. Learned something every day. All right, that's why I wanted to bring it by you. All right, thank you.
Any other questions or comments regarding this motion? Mrs. Scott?
From the conversations, I hear that there have not been bylaws or they have not been found, is that correct?
It's the gist of it,
All
yeah.
these years, no bylaws. The bylaws would cover missed meetings?
That's the intent of
That's
the
in the
planning
current
commission,
draft.
yeah.
Okay, so you're gonna approve something yet, it's not,
Now, we're
It's
approving
not
the
approving the bylaws.
powers and duties, not the bylaws. The
Oh.
bylaws will be at another meeting.
powers and duties.
Correct, just
Now-
just explaining out what it is that's expected of the planning commission instead of having like a one paragraph, one liner about whatever it was, just further expanding on it
Okay,
to make it clear, so the public can know what's
Right.
expected in the planning commission.
okay, so my last question would be, so if somebody hasn't attended meetings or missed 2 consecutive, or it's never a matter, so you're going to put an alternate? Now, does the alternate attend, or,
Yeah, planning commission meetings are open to the public, so, but the alternate would be there in case,
or what about the voting
well, that's what,
process?
that would be what the alternates are there for.
Say there's a conflict of interest or something where they
Abstention,
couldn't, yeah,
refusal.
someone couldn't vote.
Okay,
So they could step in, having been there and having the knowledge to be able to make a vote on it.
okay. Okay, so what if the alternate doesn't, I don't know, it gets a little,
If the alternate doesn't attend, then yeah, the planning commission would take action to remove that person and bring another alternate in who is willing to
and
attend.
same way if you are a regular appointed
Correct.
member, you can be removed.
Correct.
Okay. And then is there any process or criteria for putting someone on the planning commission? Or not putting someone on the planning commission?
I don't think it's defined in there per se, it's usually, they come before the planning commission will make a recommendation to the board. The board can ask questions of that person or deem yes or no for that individual as suggested by.
The MPC though has a little bit of rules, like it has to be a
Yeah.
resident of the township,
Yeah.
things like that, that the Commonwealth has in place.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or comments? All those in favor, aye. Motion carries 5-0. I make a motion to approve resolution 2017-02, appointing Barbara Thornton and Company as the East Fallowfield Township auditors, replacing the elected auditors for the fiscal year of 2016.
Second.
Questions or comments?
Question,
Yes, sir.
why are we replacing the elected auditor?
Because typically, the auditing services, this has actually been done for years in the township. Um, Typically, the depth of an audit that you get from just a general elected auditor is going to be much, much less than the more professional outside consultant auditing firms that they can provide in terms of depth, scope of services and recommendations and all that stuff. So that's the general rationale for why you'd want to use an outside auditing agency, which is allowed under the Second Class Township Code, instead of just merely an elected board of auditors.
There's a savings with this one too.
There is a savings with this one as well.
So we're following a good system here. I mean, when I came on board, or just before I came on board, they made a switch with the auditor for, it was almost a $6,000 or $7,000 savings with the one we just had, Mingus, and now we're switching out. What's the savings here with this?
It's not that much, it's 1,000 or 2,000,
Okay.
but it's one that's used pretty heavily within municipalities in this area and has a very high rating, not that the other ones didn't, but, you know,
Sure.
just good to switch up every now and then too, as well,
Right.
the auditing firm side.
Plus they offer more services.
Yeah, they did offer more services throughout the year for us, which is helpful.
Yep.
Any other questions or comments? All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Carries 5-0. There are a few things left over from the reorg meeting, the vacancy board. Nobody volunteered at that point. I know Mr. Nash and Mr. Zeller, you had both volunteered last year. Would either of you be willing to do it again this year? Be on the vacancy board? Or anybody else here as well?
Maybe just a comment. Yeah, last year when Mr. Pomorski resigned and there was a vacancy, and that's when I became, and actually Tom Nash was selected and I was a vacancy board selection at that time. And I didn't realize the duties, I thought, because I noticed here at the January 3rd meeting, I was not there, I did not attend. I was not aware that I was supposed to attend, and hence maybe I'm supposed to attend all the
No, it's.
meetings in between, but my assumption was that if there's a vacancy on the board, which would be for a protracted period of time or so, that's when the vacancy board member would then fill in temporarily.
That's
until
one
the-
scenario.
No, that's
that's
not
not-
a scenario either.
No, wait,
That's not true.
wait,
No,
so
so
he's saying if there's a resignation on the board of
No,
supervisors?
he said if there's an extended one, that he would fill in.
Oh, no,
If-
no.
The point of the vacancy board is if the board, if a supervisor steps down, as we had happen last year, and the remaining four, in our case, cannot come to an agreement on a candidate, then the vacancy chair will come in and cast the
Tie-breaking vote.
tie-breaking vote. That's the point of having somebody on the vacancy board.
Until there's another supervisor selected.
No,
You don't vote on anything else as a
That's
vacancy
Voting,
You
you'd be
break the
voting
tie.
for the replacement.
for the replacement.
Oh,
That's
for
the only,
replacement, that's all you're voting.
that's all the job of
Yeah,
it
that
is.
was all it was for.
Correct.
There is like an unwritten rule from boards of the past where the vacancy board member might be the one, you technically could be the one selected. I mean, if there's 4 members or a majority of the board, they could select the vacancy board member as the member, you know, given,
Yeah,
They would
it's
think
it's
they know
only when
something.
there's a tie that on all
Right.
candidates that no.
On the candidate.
right, where you would come in and be the
I would be willing to
voter.
serve again. And I noticed Buddy Rhodes here actually was, he volunteered, and I think Buddy'd be a fine person for that. And I had a curiosity question here, that he is on the historical commission. I don't know exactly why he couldn't serve as a vacancy board member and also be on the historical commission.
Sure, it's considered an incompatible office under the Second Class Township Code. So, the code requires that the vacancy board chair, as well as the zoning hearing board members, don't hold any other positions with the township, appointed or elected.
Well, with that in mind, I offer my services for another year. Thank you.
Chairman, I so move.
Well, yeah. I make a motion to appoint Erwin Zeller as the East Fallowfield Township 2017 vacancy board member.
Second.
Questions or comments? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0. Thank you, Mr. Zeller. The Agricultural Security Commission, I know you had done it before, Ed. Are you still
Yeah.
willing to serve on that this year?
I think I've done it for 3 years, yeah,
Okay.
sure.
I'll make a motion, we just didn't want to do it without your
I understand.
being there at the last meeting. I make a motion to appoint Ed Porter as the 2017 Chairman of the Agricultural Security Commission.
Second.
Questions or comments? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
I'll abstain.
Motion carries 4-0. Supervisor liaison appointments, again, this was, we only had 3 at the last meeting, so we just wanted everybody here to go through it. We had done this last year. You can just go through and see, but I believe, Carol, you were for Planning Commission
Yes.
last year, are you still?
Awesome.
Okay. Did we have any liaison to the zoning hearing board?
No, we can't. That's a separate,
Right.
right, that's a whole.
Well, you might have a liaison to like attend meetings and kind of just observe. You wouldn't be able to participate as a member of that board or go into the back.
Right. I don't think we've ever had actually an appointment to that position.
Yeah, okay.
Does anybody want to be?
I think we should probably steer, because we have to be careful not
Careful
to
with
be
it.
in conflict of interest with, because they're a separate, like a quasi.
Okay. Library, I don't remember who was last year.
Do we have a library?
We donate to the Coatesville Public Library,
Oh,
so it'd be in conjunction with that.
The board's in agreement, I don't think we've ever, we don't need, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what that liaison would necessarily do. Historical Commission,
Something like that. I think Chuck had that previous. Cool. Randy, you
I'll
want?
take that.
Randy, okay. Emergency Services and Fire Marshal. I think I was last year, I'm willing to do so unless anybody else really wants to.
This one.
Financial Administration, I don't remember that one.
Yeah, we've never had that.
Trash and Recycling, I don't think we need that.
Who made this, Lisa, did you make this list?
I think it's based off an old
It's
list.
based off our own
Okay.
agenda,
Yeah,
but
that was-
I'll remove these
Yeah.
for next.
Yeah,
Website is really through the office. Newsletters through the office. Park and Rec, somebody wants to be a liaison if that ever comes back up this year.
I'll do it if ever it comes back up. If anyone wants to volunteer,
Yes,
I mean, members.
looking for volunteers.
Let them know.
Police, I believe I had done that with you as the assistant last year. If we want
That's
to do
fine.
that again,
Sure.
I'm perfectly fine with that. Public Works, Wilson, I believe you did last year, and he was still willing to be liaison to Public Works this year?
Yeah, that'd be fine.
Okay. Township Office, I believe it's you, Ed, last year. If you want to do it again, that's fine. If
Yeah, I'm fine.
All right, so I will make a motion to appoint the following board liaisons as presented. Planning Commission, Carol Culp. Historical Commission, Randy Doan. Emergency Services and Fire Marshal, Steve Herzog. Park and Recreation, Ed Porter. Police, Steve Herzog and Ed Porter. Public Works, Wilson Lambert. Township Office, Ed Porter.
Second.
Questions or comments?
One comment, just so everyone understands, the liaisons, as the board has it structured, are just messengers. We don't have it set up where you're,
I'm done.
in charge, like there's nothing that any supervisor can do outside of the board of supervisor members, so it's just a messenger and not some type of manager or anything like that, just so it's clear.
Yeah, no decisions get made through them at all, comes back to the board.
Yep.
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0, thank you, everybody. State Supervisor's voting delegate, I know I was not able to go this year, and I think a few others, is anybody able to go?
I'm gonna go to the Monday,
The Monday, the voting's on Tuesday, so.
so I don't need to go.
go
Monday's the
Tuesday.
biggest day
You'll
out
go
of
Tuesday?
office.
All right, I'll make a motion to appoint Ed Porter as the 2017 State Supervisors Association Convention voting delegate.
Second.
Questions or comments? This position, just as information to the public, is, I did it last year, on the Tuesday morning of that week, the 2 days. They bring up a whole bunch of different things, or recommendations to the township code, anything that affects the township, and you vote yea or nay on it. It was quite an amusing process last year, but, you know, a lot of different things come up that you could see changes come down the road as far as how townships are legislated and governed. So that's the point of that person. All those in favor? Aye.
I'll abstain.
Motion carries 4-0. Dennis, do you have anything in your report for Mike? Yeah. You can get through that. I don't think there's anything else on here requiring Mike afterwards, so.